Picture this, a song so explosive the FBI spent 2 years chasing down its lyrics, while across the Atlantic, a single stutter in a rock anthem sent BBC bosses scrambling for the ban button. In these 10 cases, hit records did not just rattle parents, they triggered national investigations, late-night memo wars, and sudden radio blackouts. So, what does it take to turn a chart-topping track into forbidden music history? The wild stories behind these banned, pulled, or censored rock songs begin with an eyebrow-raising lyric and end with consequences no one saw coming. Let's find out how the censors tried to silence the sound. In October 1965, The Who released a single that became a rallying cry for restless teens and a red flag for the BBC. Roger Daltrey's sharp-edged stutter slices through the chorus. That was not a studio mistake. Daltrey leaned into the stammer, repeating, "Why don't you all F, fade away," which gave the song a nervy, unpredictable energy. The sound was new, raw, and for some, a little too real. Within weeks, a memo landed on the desk of the BBC head of music programs. The verdict was simple: off the air. The internal log listed the reason as offensive to those with speech impediments. For the BBC, it was not about drugs, sex, or politics. It was about decency, or at least their idea of it. The ban was swift. My Generation vanished from national playlists, effectively banned just as it started to catch fire in clubs and on pirate radio. But the ban did not stop the song's momentum. Across the Atlantic, American stations had no such qualms. By the end of 1965, My Generation was climbing the American charts, peaking at number 11 on Billboard. Meanwhile, back in Britain, the decision set a clear line in the sand. If a lyric or vocal style seemed likely to offend, even unintentionally, gatekeepers would pull the plug. The Who shrugged off the controversy, calling the whole thing absurd, and kept smashing guitars on stage. For fans, the ban only added to the song's outlaw appeal. Today, My Generation stands as a classic, proof that sometimes all it takes is a stutter to make the censors sweat. January 1967, and the Rolling Stones are backstage at CBS, facing a problem only rock stars dream about. Their new single, Let's Spend the Night Together, is climbing the charts, but American television is not ready for that kind of invitation. Ed Sullivan's producers, clutching sponsor notes and production memos, informed the band that the word night was too suggestive for prime time. Either the lyrics change or the Stones do not play. Mick Jagger, never one to back down quietly, agrees, but with a twist. On live television, he croons, "Let's spend some time together," and he rolls his eyes so hard the message is clear. CBS gets its sanitized lyric, but the band's Sly Rebellion slips through anyway. The censors win the battle, but not the war. Radio stations across the US split. Some ban the track outright, others spin it after dark, worried about upsetting parents and sponsors. Despite the fuss, the single still lands on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 55. In the UK, nobody blinks, and the song sails through airwaves untouched. The Stones, meanwhile, pocket the controversy and keep moving. For American television, this was a line in the sand. Suggestive lyrics meant gatekeepers could and would rewrite the script, even if it meant making rock's bad boys play nice. But as the next song would prove, radio had its own tricks for keeping things clean, especially when the sun went down. May 1971, and the Rolling Stones are everywhere, except it seems on the radio during daylight hours. Brown Sugar rockets straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, but the song's not-so-subtle lyrics have program directors sweating over their playlists. The opening lines alone, slave ships, New Orleans, and a wink at forbidden pleasures, are enough to make any cautious DJ reach for the clock. The trick is day parting, spin it after dark, when the kids are in bed and the switchboard is less likely to light up with complaints from parents or sponsors. Official memos are nowhere to be found, but trade magazines from the era hint at a quiet consensus. Some records are just too hot for drive time. One station manager told a trade paper in 1971 that you do not play brown sugar at breakfast. Label representatives laugh it off, reminding anyone who will listen that controversy sells. Meanwhile, the Stones barely blink. Mick Jagger shrugs in interviews, calling the lyrics a bit over the top, but the band never apologizes. For every station that ducks the single during daylight, another slips it into the late-night rotation, fueling the song's outlaw mystique. By the end of June, Brown Sugar is not just a hit, it is a test of how much heat radio gatekeepers are willing to take. Even at number 1, the song proves that moral panic does not always stop at the chart's edge. Sometimes it just changes the hour. Late August 1968, and American radio programmers are on edge. The Rolling Stones released Street Fighting Man just as the country reeled from violent clashes outside the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The single landed at number 48 on the Billboard Hot 100, but before it could climb any higher, a bulletin from ABC radio affiliate networks circulated behind the scenes. Program directors across dozens of major cities read a warning that given the present climate, the song could trigger unrest and they should not add it to rotation. It is not a government ban, no FCC memo, no court order. Instead, it was a quiet, coordinated retreat. The gatekeepers were local, but the message was national. With cities burning and headlines screaming riot, nobody wanted to be the station blamed for fanning the flames. Some affiliates yanked the single from their playlists overnight. Others refused to stock it at all, sending copies back to the label unopened. The Stones label tried to pivot, pushing the B-side, but the damage was done. Airplay plummeted and sales stalled out. Mick Jagger, asked about the blackout, did not mince words. He said they told us we would start riots if they played it. He was half amused, half annoyed. For the Stones, controversy was familiar territory, but this time, the censors were not worried about sex or drugs. It was the politics that scared them. With Street Fighting Man, radio drew a line. When lyrics collided with real-world unrest, playing it safe meant pulling the plug. May 1977. The Sex Pistols are everywhere, except in the windows of Britain's biggest record shops. God Save the Queen drops just weeks before the Silver Jubilee, with Johnny Rotten's snarling lines that take direct aim at the monarchy. The backlash is instant. HMV, Woolworths, and WH Smith all refuse to stock the single. Letters from store managers start piling up at Virgin Records, citing concerns over public order and decency, and one called the single blatant treason. Even smaller shops get visits from local police who warn that selling the record could mean trouble. Malcolm McLaren, the band's manager, is not having it. He sends the Pistols on a publicity blitz that ends with them on a boat floating down the Thames, blasting their band anthem outside Parliament. Police boats swarm in, officers board, and the party ends with several arrests and a stack of police reports. Meanwhile, the BBC and most independent radio stations blacklist the single, but sales skyrocket anyway. In its first week, God Save the Queen sells 150,000 copies, without a single play on national radio. The official charts listed at number 2, but insiders and fans cry foul, pointing to sales logs that beat the so-called winner by thousands. For punk, the message is clear. Even when the system slams every door, a song this loud finds a way through. The Pistols, grinning through the chaos, become the face of a youth revolt that refuses to be shelved or silenced. In November 1979, Pink Floyd released Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2. Within months, the chorus, sung by a children's choir, was echoing far beyond British airwaves. By early 1980, the song topped charts on nearly every continent. But in South Africa, the government was listening for something else. As student protests erupted across the country, kids in black townships started singing "We Don't Need No Education." turning the song into a rallying cry against apartheid's rigid, unequal school system. The lyrics were not just rebellious, they were dangerous to a regime built on control. The South African Directorate of Publications acted quickly. In May 1980, officials issued a directive banning the song and its parent album from radio, TV, and record stores. The order reached every state broadcaster and was enforced by the SABC Central Record Acceptance Committee, which marked the record Afgekeer, which is Afrikaans for rejected, because it promoted subversion. The ban was not just symbolic. At the height of the school boycotts, over 40 students were killed in clashes with police, and protest leaders reported that Pink Floyd's anthem fueled the marches, uniting thousands in defiance. The government notice called the track prejudicial to the safety of the state. Roger Waters, watching from afar, later called it a cultural blockade. For South African students, the ban only sharpened the song's power. Another brick in the wall vanished from legal airwaves, but it kept playing in classrooms, on street corners, and in whispered defiance. It was proof that even the tightest censorship cannot muffle a chorus when the people have already claimed it. By 1973, the Rolling Stones had already tangled with censors on both sides of the Atlantic, but nothing in their catalog matched the sheer audacity of Star Star. Tucked away as the final track on the album Goat's Head Soup, the song was originally titled a name that left radio programmers and label executives clutching their pearls. The lyrics did not bother with innuendo. Mick Jagger spat out references to Hollywood groupies, late-night phone calls, and acts that made even seasoned producers wince. That summer, a playlist log at a major U.S. station simply read, "Raunchy, unplayable." The label, sensing disaster for the album's radio prospects, made a last-minute decision and slapped a new title on the sleeve. Star Star replaced in all official promo, but the song's chorus stayed gloriously uncensored. Even so, radio gatekeepers were not fooled. Most refused to add it to their rotation, and some stations went so far as to remove the track from their copies of the LP. The Stones' American label, Atlantic Records, fielded complaints from religious groups and nervous advertisers, but the band did not blink. Producer Jimmy Miller shrugged and said, "We knew what we were doing. It is rock and roll." With airplay off the table, Star Star became the Stones' underground badge of honor. Bootleg tapes and word of mouth did the work that radio would not. For fans, the song's absence from the airwaves only added to its mystique. In the era of album-oriented rock, the message was clear. Sometimes the gatekeepers do not just bleep a word, they erase the whole track from the conversation. Summer 1979 and Highway to Hell by AC/DC was burning up rock radio, with Bon Scott's Grin just as cheeky as the title. The band said it was a nod to the grind of endless touring, but in the Bible Belt, that is not how the lyrics landed. By August, station managers in cities like Tulsa and Birmingham were fielding stacks of mail, handwritten letters, and some typed, all stamped with church logos or signed by local pastors. One letter saved in a 1979 station file said the song promoted Satanism and moral decay and demanded its removal from rotation. Advertisers started to get nervous. A regional car dealership pulled its spots after complaints from regulars at Sunday service. A soft drink company representative called the station to ask if their jingle could air next to anything less controversial. The pressure was real, and some program directors decided it was not worth the headache. Highway to Hell disappeared from playlists at several AM stations across the South, replaced by safer fare like Eagles Ballads and Fleetwood Mac. Bon Scott, never one to miss a punchline, told a reporter that if they were promoting the devil, they would have better suits. The band's label shrugged off the fuss, but the controversy only sharpened the band's outlaw image. Album sales kept climbing, and by September 1979, Highway to Hell was sitting at number 17 on the Billboard charts. The song's absence from certain airwaves made it more appealing to teenagers with a taste for trouble. For the activists, the letter campaigns felt like a moral victory. For the band, it was just another stamp in the passport of rock and roll rebellion. August 1989, and a letter lands on the desk at Ruthless Records, a plain envelope with a return address from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The message inside is not subtle. The Assistant Director of the FBI Office of Public Affairs warns the label about NWA's Fuck the Police, calling out its advocacy of violence and disrespect for law enforcement officers. It is not a threat of prosecution, but the letter makes clear the government is watching. The label's legal team reads it twice, then passes it to the group's manager, Jerry Heller. He calls it a scare tactic, but the chilling effect is real. Radio stations, already wary, start logging refusals. By September, major urban stations across Los Angeles, Detroit, and New York refuse to play the track. Some cite community standards, others simply underline the letter and file it away. NWA's members, especially Ice Cube and Dr. Dre, do not back down. In interviews, they say the letter proves their message hit a nerve. The press runs with the story. Headlines read FBI targets rap group. Record store owners field calls from local police asking about in-store play. Some stores pull the album from shelves. Despite the pressure, Straight Outta Compton climbs to #1 on the Billboard Top R and B hip-hop albums chart. The controversy only sharpens the group's image as unfiltered voices for their community. The FBI's letter, meant to silence, ends up fueling the legend. The letter closes with the line, "We trust you will take appropriate action." For NWA, the only action left is to keep playing louder. Censorship still shapes what we hear. Just ask any artist flagged by algorithms or pulled from a playlist today. Every song silenced reminds us that gatekeepers don't just belong to the past. As streaming platforms and social media take the reins, the fight for creative freedom enters new territory. The real question is, who decides which voices get heard next? Drop your thoughts below and join the conversation.